आमे गोटे नुआ इनिशिएटिव लॉन्च करूचे जोटा कि जार आमे ना देछे मिलेनियम डायलॉग आर आइडिया को तुमको करे खुशी जे प्रति मंथ रे आमे एंट्री सेशन रहिबो जो माने ऑलरेडी आमे कहबा जे एक्सपर्ट इन दैट पर्टिकुलर फील्ड हिला सपोज आमे आजिका जो टॉपिक अछि इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशनशिप आफ्टर बात ऑफ पहलगाम अटैक तो तापरे तो सेही हमरो आमे कहबा इंडिया जो बेस्ट एक्सपर्ट अछंती तो तांको माने ई टॉपिक ऊपर आमे डिस्कशन करबा साथ में अछंती ऑलरेडी तांको अवेलेबल जो एक्सपीरियंस हम संगे शेयर करिवे आमे कि जे रेयर अपॉर्चुनिटी हम कहबो छी ओडिसा रे फर्स्ट टाइम पई कोनोसी भी जगह ए बढ़िया लेवल रे हमें करने जो थे हमें कहबा जे एते हाईएस्ट इंटरनेशनल लेवल नेशनल स्टेचर माने हमें पर्सनालिटीज बड़े प्लेटफॉर्म में हम यंगर जनरेशन मानन से मानकर एक्सपीरियंस आउ नॉलेज शेयर करबा आउ तमने भी लकी मु भी लकी टू हैव all of these expert stars in our platform then हमें आज जो टॉपिक डिस्कशन करबा सो सर अछंती पार्थ सर अछंती जे कि पूरा सेशन को मॉडरेट करिवे एंड टोटल सेशन को कंट्रोल करिवे सो आई वेलकम ऑल ऑफ यू फॉर दिस मिलेनियम डिस्कशन एंड यूट्यूब चैनल करिवे जो कि जोटा को नेशनल इश्यू रहला जेमति कि हमें एबे इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशनशिप ऊपर कोचे नेक्स्ट में भी हमें जो कास्ट एंड सेक्स ऊपर गोटे टॉपिक आसो नेक्स्ट आउ को टॉपिक आसो तो जोटा को हॉट टॉपिक में भी मंथली हमर गोटे सेशन रहइबो जोथिरे एक्सपर्ट माने आसीबे एंड स्टूडेंट्स माने इंटरेक्शन हबो सर माने सेमानकर एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करिवे सेमानकर थॉट शेयर करबे आ किछि क्वेश्चन आंसर होबे तो ये वाला सेशन चलिबो जो YouTube चैनल में से भी अपलोड हबो इन फ्यूचर नेक्स्ट समय पर एटा थ्रू आउट ओडिसा में थ्रू आउट नेशनल लेवल पे so सेटा हमर थॉट्स so with this I request Partha sir to take over the session and moderate the whole session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. So good evening, Kalinga IAS Academy. This is the first time I am visiting your esteemed institute. I am so happy to have met Mr. Deepak Raut, and we had almost 1 hour chat, but that was not sufficient. I am to visit again to know more and more about your esteemed institute, and is so proud of all your, I should say, alumni who are having flying colors across the country in Odisha also. I wish you all the best at the outset. That's the first thing. And good evening, esteemed panel of speakers. Major General Dr. Atanu Patnaik. He has tremendous experience. I'll read out his profile in a bit. Ambassador Dr. Malay Mishra. Professor Satyanarayan Mishra. So I would like to set the context. Major General Atanu Patnaik is going to talk about the military perspective, Indo-Pak relations in the context of Pahalgam attack, right? And he'll be the first speaker. Thereafter, we'll hear Ambassador Malay Mishra. He'll be talking about the global perspective, diplomacy, and strategic moves in context of this particular Pahalgam incident. Followed by Professor Satyanarayan Mishra, who's going to talk about the economic impact or the influence of this kind of a conflict nationally and globally. And I would request Professor Mishra also to summarize the entire session. And followed by, we'll have a question answer session. I have requested early on to Mr. Deepak that we'll have max 7 to 8 questions because of paucity of time. So the questions will be read out, and if you have any further clarifications that question, our gentlemen will definitely try to satisfy your inquisitiveness. Okay? So may I request Major General Atanu Patnaik, about whom I'll read out his profile in a minute, and then I'll request him to take the dais. Major General Atanu Patnaik, a helicopter pilot with extensive flying experience in the Siachen, trained at Fort Rucker, Alabama, USA. He is a Gallantry Award winner. He has been He has been Chief Humanitarian Officer of United Nations Mission in Lebanon. He attended Senior Executive Program at U.S. National Defense University, Washington, D.C. He commanded Frontline Infantry Brigade in Sikkim and was Chief of Staff of the largest corps across 6 northeastern states. He's a PhD in psychology. He's a prolific writer, serving currently as Director, Center for Indology and Culture, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Bhubaneswar. Major General Atanu Patnaik. Sir, please.
Thank you, Partha, for this wonderful introduction and for setting the stage for today's discussion. In any war, there is a lot of fog and a lot of misinformation, lots of disinformation, lot of narratives, lot of counter narratives, both in the mainstream media as well as in the recent past on the social media. So today is a very important day. It's 1 month down the line since the Pahalgam attack happened, 22nd of May. So we can safely assume that a lot of this fog has been cleared because there is plenty available in the open source, in the newspapers, in the discussions, and you will be able to shift the material and see, I mean, how much of truth is there in any narrative. And therefore today is a I will say opportune time to look back in hindsight what all happened leading up to the Pahalgam attack and thereafter till date, and also kind of postulate or say imagine with our bit of foresight what could be the set of events that could possibly happen in the days to come. Okay. Terrorism in the form that is prevalent now is something that spans at least 4 decades in our continent, the Indian subcontinent, going back to the 80s. When General Zia-ul-Haq, who was the military dictator in Pakistan, adopted this, something which actually bleeding India by 1,000 cuts was something not exactly worded that way, but that is how Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had said in the propounded after a very comprehensive defeat of Pakistan that happened in 1971. We took 93,000 prisoners of war. Possibly the biggest and most conclusive victory that any armed force has achieved anywhere in the world. So Pakistan realized that their agenda of the Pakistan army especially, agenda of continuously engaging India, raising the Kashmir issue, the bogey of an enemy on our border, on their border, so that they can appropriate all the resources, maximum resources and power within Pakistan. That was the whole aim. That is how Pakistan army has sustained all these years, taking over power overtly whenever it was required. Otherwise, in the background, pulling the strings of all the governments, right from their inception. So this 4-decade-long Islamic, fundamental Islamic terrorism, which has been bleeding India, is something which will be difficult to cover in say 10-15 minutes. Nor will it be possible to cover all the activities that happened in this 4 days war. Just for your information, long time back in 1992, also there was a 4 days war on the in Siachen Glacier, just exactly where the line of control finishes and the actual ground position line starts. That's a point called NJ9842. It happened in July of 1992, and it was a 4 days operation. I was involved in it from day one. I flew missions right from morning till late evening, till we could have no daylight anymore, and therefore we couldn't discern. It's very difficult to do night flying in hills. There is no depth perception. On the 4th day, they came up with a white flag because their brigade commander was shot down when an Igla missile was fired, and we had a ceasefire. So when we talk about ceasefire, it is a very loose term which is being used, because there is just a temporary pause in military operations. That's what we must understand. So there is a lot of agitation in the minds of our citizens, specifically because they say that in this 4 days campaign, India was winning. We were winning, and there was no doubt about it, and we should have kept up that momentum and continued the operations. So there was a lot of frustration which has been expressed by variety of people, citizens, students, on the social media, discussions, podcasts, political parties who are not aligned with the government. So there is a need to clarify on these issues as well. We must understand that Pakistan is a nuclear power, and since 1998, as I said, the building India by 1,000 cuts was started in the 80s by Ziaul Haq. But effectively, it was 1998, once they, both the countries became declared nuclear powers, that the nuclear overhang was used by Pakistan very effectively. Like you would have noticed, on the day one of the Operation Sindoor, in the interim period between April 22nd and May 7th, many of the Pakistani politicians, including ministers, have threatened that we have it, we have the nuclear weapon, and it will be our first choice of use. So this threat, as I said, from 1998 has been a constant factor, and therefore series of events that have happened from 1998. First, the Kargil happened in 1999. We were also winning. We took over, we recaptured those posts, but thereafter we didn't expand. Prime Minister Bajpayee had given very strict instructions: no one will cross the line of control. That was a self-restraint we put so that the war doesn't expand. What was the main factor? Main factor was that nuclear overhang. Then December 2001, the parliamentary attack took place, attack on Indian Parliament, very daring attack, and then we mobilized all our forces on the western borders. We stayed there for almost 18 months. Despite our forces being poised, and there are at least two windows, once in January 2002 and once in June 2002 when the Cuttack incident happened. So there were opportunities where possibly we could have gone in and a full-fledged war would have broken out. But we didn't. Again, because of nuclear overhang. Then 26/11 happened. In 2008, Mumbai was attacked. It was attacked over 4 days in front of full glare of the cameras. We had conclusive proof of Pakistan's involvement, including their establishment. Yet, we did not respond. All we did was we compiled dossier of all these terrorist organizations, their camps, and we'll share it with Pakistan and plead with them that you investigate. We'll go around with this literature to UN or any other organization whosoever was prepared to listen to us. But beyond that, we did nothing. This narrative changed only in 2016 when the Uri attack took place and we carried out surgical strikes. But again, it was very limited. It was across the line of control. There was no publicity around it. And therefore, a lot of opposition parties also continue to doubt about it, which is unfortunate, because if the armed forces are involved in something, we should repose our faith in that. If we don't repose our faith in armed forces, then in whom is the country going to repose their faith? Once your police fails, you call the central CRP or BSF to control the town. Once they fail, you call in the army. If the army fails, whom do you call? So therefore, it's unfortunate, and that's a thing we should be at least aware of. So Uri happened. Then 2019, the Pulwama incident happened, and we struck at the terror camp in Balakot. It was an airstrike. Again, it was on the line of control, and it was across POK into the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of western province of Pakistan, but it was a one-off mission. We still didn't expand it. And again, there was a factor of deniability which Pakistan could say that there was nothing happened, which is something which again our opposition parties and a lot of people lapped up, and we tried to kind of undermine the effort that went in. But it broke. It broke the narrative that continued from 1998 that we cannot take any appropriate riposte against Pakistan because there is a nuclear overhang. Right. So that was broken first in 2016, then in 2019. So that acted as a deterrence for a while, till Asim Munir, who was the ISI chief during the Pulwama attack in 2019, he was finishing his 3 years and it was time to, kind of assert himself. So on 16th of April, he gave that famous talk where he, again, reminded everybody about the two-nation theory, that Muslims cannot cohabit with Hindus, and therefore the partition took place and Kashmir is the unfinished agenda. So that was kind of a, you can say, a trigger or say whatever. 22 April, this massacre happened in Pahalgam. What is unique about Pahalgam? 26 lives were lost. Lives have been lost in 175 lives were lost in the Mumbai attack. 175 lives were lost. But here 26 lives were lost. So what is special about this? The most, kind of, I will say, change in paradigm was that they killed only Hindu males after positively identifying them, asking them to pull their pants down, and shot in cold blood in front of their children. One of the terrorists was apparently told Modi ko bata dena. It was a message to Modi that you can carry on and do anything, but you dare not act against us because we have nuclear. That was the thought. But Pakistan establishment knew that, going back to 2016 and experience in 2019, that there will be a retribution from India. So they were prepared. There was a lot of clamor. I think I spoke here sometimes back on this. There was a lot of clamor that why is India not acting. On 22nd April, the Prime Minister was in Saudi Arabia on a state visit. He was informed. He cut short his visit. He flew back. In the duration of the flight, he contacted our security establishments, came back, held meetings with the Cabinet Committee on Security, followed by extensive meetings with the chiefs of the Army, Navy and Air Force, the Chief of Defence Staff, the National Security Advisor. They had many sessions. They had meeting with the opposition parties as well, all party meets, so that the government can share some of the thoughts and the opposition is taken on board. One glaring part was that, a very positive part was that there was complete congruence between the military and the political establishment in this. It's unlike 1971, when Madam Gandhi wanted India to attack in April 1971, and General Manekshaw, later Field Marshal, vehemently opposed it, saying that we will be bogged down in the monsoons in Bangladesh and we should delay it and wait for the winter so that the Himalayas have got snow and the Chinese cannot also interfere. And 13 days war which happened was a very decisive war with a comprehensive victory. What happened after that is a lesson in how a victory can be turned into a strategic defeat, that we did not regain and settle the Kashmir issue. The Simla agreement was, I will say, surrender in a sense, that we gave back 93,000 POWs without getting back our own. There are 160 odd people who possibly, some of them are languishing, some of them are dead in various Pakistani jails. And we got nothing out of it. So those of us in the citizenry who believe that we should have gone in and continued this offensive must understand, we should set our very clear-cut political-military objectives and figure out what can be achieved and what cannot be achieved. I will make a comparison with what's happening in the Middle East, in Gaza, which is just 40 kilometers by 10 to 12 kilometers width strip with 2 million people. It has been bombed from bottom to top many times. It looks like a demolition site. Has Israel been able to control Hamas? No. If that is the answer, then you must understand what are you setting out to do when you continue with military operations across the border and get entangled in a country as large as France with a broken country, financially broken and physically breaking apart, full of jihadis. So it's a lesson we must see what's happening across the world, another place, and learn our lessons. So after 14 days, the night of 6th, 7th, we targeted 9 militant hideouts. They were not hideouts actually, they were Markaz, which is the school of terrorism. They were universities of terrorism, you can say, because the one in Bahawalpur in Punjab was as large as this, I think about 16 acres sprawling campus with its swimming pool, shooting range and many buildings. One factor that I want to highlight is that we have plugged the intelligence gap and we have been able to map all these terror hideouts very, very carefully and with pinpoint precision. So about 40 odd buildings were chosen from these 9 sites and they were bombed. While this was being done, India had taken into confidence some of its allies like the United States, UK, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Russia. These are countries which were briefed personally by the External Affairs Minister so that they know what's happening. What followed over, and we made a very clear distinction that we are targeting terror. No military establishment was touched. Now Pakistan had a choice of keeping quiet, that since no military bases were touched, civilian centers where there was no collateral damage. But no, it is very difficult to distinguish between the military establishment and the terror camps, practically. So they, on night of 7th, 8th and 8th, 9th, they targeted numerous, the entire border was opened up from LOC to IB right down up to Bhuj in Gujarat. So Jalandhar, Chandigarh, Ludhiana, right down to Bhuj, number of border towns in Rajasthan, from Punch, Rajouri to Bhuj. They were targeted. They fired swarms of missiles, drones and exchange of artillery shelling, which happened on the LOC only. But missiles and drones were fired along all this. We have put in over these years a very robust air defense system, starting from S-400 Russian, which late Manohar Parrikar took the initiative in 2018 to push for its import, despite opposition, severe opposition from the Americans. So S-400, which gives a protection umbrella for about 400 kilometers, down to Barak missiles, medium range SAMs, MR SAMs they are called, as surface-to-air missiles. We have Arakas, which is 25 kilometers. We got Spiker, which is about 15 kilometers. We got Igla S, 6 kilometers, Igla M, 4 kilometers. Then we have our traditional L-70 guns. So this entire thing has been plus our drones. So we have devised our own air defense system called Akash Tir, fantastic system which today you can say it rivals the Iron Dome of Israel. In fact, this is a 4-day operation which has showcased what exactly India has achieved in terms of indigenization and in terms of innovation and defense production in the country. So we were able to rebuff all the attempts by them. On the night of 8th, 9th, they fired Shaheen 1 and Shaheen 2 cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, The Sahin is also nuclear capable. It was, I am not saying they were carrying nuclear arms, but nuclear capable. One of them possibly was targeted towards Delhi, and it was shot down over the Air Force station at Sirsa in Haryana. So then India decided that we must, now take some even bolder action. Those 2 nights, while they were firing these drones and missiles, we also carried out strikes against the air defense systems. They have got this SQ-9 Chinese air defense systems and their own fighter bases and all. So we carried out a suppression of the air defense systems during these 2 nights. So on night of 9th, 10th, which was a decisive one, we struck 11 air bases right from north to down to Karachi. 11 air bases, and possibly 3 of them, the Malarkant base in Karachi, the Noor Khan base in Rawalpindi, and the Kirana Hills in Sargodha, they are sites which house nuclear assets, could be nuclear, the warhead itself, the missiles that carry it, the launch pads, the control centers, which the Pakistani nuclear assets are controlled by the Strategic Plans Division, which is based in Noor Khan Air Base in Rawalpindi. So all these sites were hit. This would have caused enormous alarm in the West, and specifically United States. Here I am bringing in the United States because US has been deeply embedded in Pakistan since the 50s. I don't want to dwell too much into the Cold War era and how they're invested, but CIA is the agency that actually propped up Taliban, and all the Taliban teaching material in the schools were printed in US and flown in. So that's the kind of, the radicalization has been progressed beyond control by generous funding and technical help from the CIA. That was directed against Soviets in Afghanistan, but thereafter, a trained force is to be used elsewhere. So that is how in the 90s, once Afghanistan was occupied by the Taliban, they were redirected towards Kashmir, and you had, the valley erupted in a big way. You had if you recollect, the exodus of Pandits from the valley started around early 90s, once Soviet Union broke up and the Soviets had withdrawn from Afghanistan. All these people directed their effort at Kashmir, and more than 10,000 Kashmiri Pandits were killed, and 500,000 left their property and everything and fled. They became refugees in their own country. Okay. So on the night of 9th, 10th, we hit their nuclear targets, and obviously US was alarmed. Exchange of calls happened, and 10th, around 3:30, the DGMO Pakistan called up the Indian DGMO, Rajiv Ghai. Rajiv Ghai and me were fellow observers in UN mission in Lebanon, so I know him very well, and we have been in touch since. So the Pakistani DGMO called up Indian DGMO and requested for cessation of hostilities, that we finish it off here. This is something they have been doing and we have been agreeing to. Like I said, in 1992 they put up a red flag, white flag, and we said okay, no more operations. And we allowed them to pull out their dead bodies. About, I think there was 78 of them that time, including 13 officers. So this is what happened, but 5 o'clock our press conference was to declare, MEA was to declare the cessation of hostilities, but Donald Trump, being Donald Trump, tweeted on his, not tweeted is not correct technically, he has got Truth Social. So on his Truth Social platform he blared to the whole world that I have brokered a ceasefire, only to be countered 2 days later when Prime Minister Modi visited the Adhampur Air Base. Again very symbolic, because Adhampur Air Base was one which Pakistan claimed to have destroyed on the night of 7th, 8th and 8th, 9th. So he visited Adhampur Air Base, and the S-400 missile was also in the background. And he said that the ceasefire has happened because of a request from Pakistan, and we have agreed to it. So that is the summation of the military operations. A number of things have, number of paradigms come out from this 4 days operation. The most important is that we have been able to call out the nuclear bluff. As you know, the Prime Minister said, Operation Sindoor is the new doctrine. It's open-ended. And he very clearly enunciated that any attack which originates from Pakistani soil, terror attack, will be considered as an act of war. So that's a big change, a paradigm change, shift from the nuclear overhang and terrorism and Pakistan's ability to perpetrate terror attacks in India without fear of retribution. All that is past. The second one is it has displayed our robust domestic defense capabilities, including our space capabilities. We took tremendous amount of photographs of the damage assessment reports, and in terms of electronics, we were able to suppress the air defense of Pakistan for 23 minutes on the night of 6/7. That is how we hit all the targets. And thereafter we kept hitting all the targets without any misses. And they missed all the targets. Says much about our air defense capabilities and our counter measures, electronic counter measures. The third issue is that we took some immediate actions after 22nd April. Putting the Indus water treaty into abeyance, banning complete trade with Pakistan, including through third parties, and to initiate efforts to put it under the Financial Action Task Force, put Pakistan back into the grey list if possible. The tragedy today is that not only UN is defunct in intervening any of these global hotspots, whether in Ukraine or in Gaza or in the subcontinent, Pakistan is sitting in the United Nations Security Council. That's the tragedy. So they were able to water down any resolution which came out of the UN Security Council. There are no mention of the resistance force, which is a offshoot of Lashkar-e-Toiba, claimed responsibility for this attack. Yet none of this was mentioned in the UNSC resolution. So they were able to water down because the resolutions come out with consensus, and Pakistan is a member of the UNSC, so there is no way one could. But whatever, even if it had blamed, it would have mattered little, because UN as such has become a different organization, going by what's happening around in Ukraine or in Gaza and elsewhere. So I'll just kind of summarize this, that going forward, we must anticipate there will be more attacks. They will wait for a time. They have nothing to lose. Actually, a country which is financially broken has nothing more to lose.
Yes.
If you encounter a beggar on the street and he's just wearing a gamcha, and you will think that, should I steal that gamcha from him? It's something like that. There's nothing you can take from Pakistan other than misery and trouble and jihadis. So it is left to itself. It is facing its own internal chaos. Balochistan is on the verge of separation. So is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Baloch Liberation Army have teamed up. So with threat from the West, which Pakistan used to always consider its strategic depth, they have got very little options conventionally, so terrorism is going to continue. We have to stay alert. I will only conclude by saying that the greater danger is within than without. We have a huge network of terror sympathizers, fundraisers, jihadi madrasas which are spewing venom against the country and against its secular nature. And there are hordes of lawyers, hordes of social media content creators. You just had Jyoti Malhotra getting arrested, and our own YouTuber from Puri under scanner. And just see all the places that they have visited. They have gone to Kartarpur corridor because they can enter without visa. They have gone to Kerala, which is a hotspot for jihadis. They have contributed dozens of ICC operators and also a Hawala center. So the money exchange would have happened. They have visited a naval base close to where they had gone, Alakada, where they spent some days. And they have also been to Pahalgam and Sonamarg. So the terror angle is being perpetrated by a whole ecosystem, and the citizenry has to be alert, not alarmed, डरना नहीं है, but सतर्क रहना है. That is the thing. We should be alert, and we should keep our eyes open and not fall to any propaganda which goes on the social media. You are all young people, so very prone to So don't believe this easily. Cross-check, fact-check, and discuss with senior citizens like us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Major General Atundu Patnaik. I'm sure as much as we enjoyed listening to Major General Atundu Patnaik, you all must have enjoyed. But my 2-cent advice would be, just imagine a gentleman who has worked in international missions, and present Lieutenant General Mr. Ghai, Rajiv Ghai, was his colleague in Lebanon mission, right? So you are hearing from the horse's mouth. My 2 cents would be, tomorrow you're going to be officers at the state level or country level. Imagine the level of command he has extempo to give examples and give a perspective through which he is teaching you indirectly the art of diplomacy, and which is what Ambassador Malay Mishra is going to talk about. So I will read out his, the credentials and his stature. Right before that, Major General Atundu Patnaik, what really attracted my, limited knowledge is 2 things he observed: repose faith on armed forces. Who else will you repose faith on? That was really, really important for us to assimilate later on. The next thing I thought was very, very pertinent: perfect congruence of all political parties and armed forces, without which ek haath se talim nahi basti hai. Right, sir? So I will just give my 2-minute for Ambassador Dr. Malay Mishra. Ambassador Dr. Malay Mishra, retired IFS, passed out from JNU Delhi after completing his MA and MPhil in political studies and international relations. Aspiring for a career in active diplomacy, he qualified for civil services in 1977. 2 years hence, he joined Indian Foreign Service. On completion of his service with the government in 2015, as India's ambassador to Hungary, he made a decision to commence a doctoral work, realizing that academics was his forte, where he could enrich his knowledge base while making a humble contribution to the society. He was awarded PhD from University of Corvinus, Budapest in 2020, underlined post his retirement from foreign service. So he has the enthusiasm, courage, determination to complete his PhD post-retirement. We all should be encouraged through this one line of, you see, on a comparative study of marginalized communities of Europe and India in the areas of social justice and sub-area of marginalization studies, namely communities of Roma and Dalits respectively. Ambassador Mishra is currently busy with various academic projects besides running a library at his residence in Puri, Odisha, where he mentors students for non-privileged background and guides them to embark on their career choices. He feels that there is still a lot to learn and sky is not the limit. Big round of applause to Ambassador Dr. Malay Mishra, please. Sir, please.
If any of you has been using the mobile, I would request these to be put aside, and you should open your eyes and ears towards me for some time that I am here standing. Well, after such an exhaustive defense perspective given by Major General Atanu Patnaik. There is nothing more from the I would say crisis side in terms of kinetic combat. I would refrain from using the word war. It was not exactly a war. War involves many things. War involves all the three armed forces to come face to face with their entire bulk of force in various ways. This was not a war. This was a crisis. And he has explained it very well that how this crisis was created by a very heinous, very hideous, very barbaric attack on our tourists who were visiting Pahalgam. 26 people, as we all know, lost their lives. And except for one foreigner who was a Nepali, 25 were Indians, including one Kashmiri Muslim. We all know that story. Let me come to the present. And I would encourage you to think out of the box, do some critical thinking, which I really believe in. You see, there is one thing of government, the way the narratives, as you well said, there are narratives and counter-narratives, both in Indian media as well as global media, about what has happened. We know the whole picture now. But it is for us to discriminate between what is fake and what is genuine. It should appeal to our rationality, it should appeal to our sense of proportion. We have to have a very clear-headed, because this is a crisis of enormous proportions. This is a crisis happening after Balakot 2019. After 6 years, we are facing such a big crisis, which involves a kind of a protracted 4-day conflict between two nuclear-armed neighbors. So it is not to be taken lightly. I will dwell upon 3 points, mainly 3 points in my introductory talk. One is the so-called Modi doctrine, or the doctrine which Prime Minister Modi laid out in his speech to the nation on May 10, and the implications of that. That is the Modi doctrine, or what we call as the way the government reacted to this crisis. The second, I will talk about the so-called ceasefire, which was announced by President Donald Trump of the USA. Even before our government had decided on that, and even before the DGMOs, as you mentioned, between Pakistan and India had spoken to each other, Donald Trump was in a big hurry to announce it to the world that he has mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and he called them two great nations, which means he was equating both India and Pakistan. You're putting both India and Pakistan on the same level. The next point which he did was internationalize Kashmir, because he said that he never mentioned about terrorism. In his ceasefire message, terrorism was not mentioned by him. It was as if terrorism did not exist, whereas terrorism was the root cause of all that happened after that. But for Donald Trump, terrorism did not matter. He never mentioned about the T word in terrorism. He just said that it is the sagacity and the statesmanship of these two great leaders, the two prime ministers of these two great nations, that they have come together, and this ceasefire is now in effect. So I will speak a little bit on that. The third, I will see what are the diplomatic options for India at this point of time. What next? What should we do? If another crisis like this happens, how do we confront it? Of course, it is well known that there have been several wars fought between India and Pakistan. At least 4 wars, in my reckoning, has been fought. And each of the wars, India has been the victor. But in each of the wars, Pakistan has never accepted that it has lost the war. Even in 1971, when the world knew that Pakistan lost, it still got away with its 93,000 prisoners of war. It still got away without surrendering POK. Remember, Kashmir, the state of Kashmir, is now with 3 countries. India, which is, which believes that Kashmir, whole and soul, is a part of India. Pakistan occupied Kashmir, is also a part of Kashmir. And China is also occupying Kashmir. And it is a game between these 3 powers. It is a game between these 3 powers. And in this game, Pakistan is heavily supported by China, which was proved by the way the munitions, the aircraft, the missiles, they all were Chinese, which the Pakistan was using. According to a CIPRI report, 81% of Pakistan's arms and ammunitions come from China, only one source. Whereas our defense sources are diversified. We get arms from Russia, we get arms from USA, we get arms from France, we get arms from Israel. We have diversified our sources of procurement of arms and ammunition, whereas Pakistan is solidly supported by China. So the point to note is, India, even in this war, was not fighting this situation, this combat situation, only with Pakistan. Note that. It was fighting this combat situation was happening with Pakistan, aided fully and solely by China. Remember, this is a very important point which will happen more and more. Now, I will just speak about the 5th industrial revolution, or rather the 4th industrial revolution which has come, which has been now using AI in a big way, plus what they call disruptive tendencies or new emerging technologies. That is the 4th industrial revolution which has come in, of which China is the leader. China is leading the world in the 4th industrial revolution. The 3rd industrial revolution was of digitization, in which India also participated. We are now at this stage of a 4th industrial revolution, where China is leading the world and even giving a big challenge to the US. Okay? Now China will definitely support in technology, in innovation, in new arms and ammunitions to Pakistan. So the situation becomes that we are fighting on 2 fronts. The Western front, Pakistan; Eastern front, China. We cannot displace our squadrons. We have, I think, under his correction, I will say there are 30 squadrons of our, am I right?
Yes.
30 squadrons, 15 on this side, 15 on the other. We cannot displace these 15 to go to the other side, even if there is a heavy war scenario. Okay? So what are our options? What can India do at this point of time? You all know that the government has already sent out this so-called multi-party delegations to various countries. You know, we have seven delegations. They already left, and I was just watching Shashi Tharoor speaking from Paris, and they have gone to many of these G5 countries. They have gone to many other important countries in many continents: Europe, Africa, Asia, America. So they have been touring the world. I will come a little later about what could be the concrete outcomes of this parliamentary or this multi-party delegations going out of India. What will they get? In 1988, when we had this Bombay strike, this, was it 88, 1988? Or what year was
1993.
Huh?
Terror attack.
Terror attack.
1993.
Yeah, the Bombay terror attack. We did a similar exercise. We sent out parliamentary delegations to several countries.
2000.
Now the question to ask is, after they went and after they sensitized the world as they are doing now, did terrorism level, the threshold of terrorism drop, or it increased? It's an open question. If it has increased, then what was the outcome of these parliamentary delegations going, which perhaps could be repeated by these current parliamentary delegations going out to scour the world and sensitize global opinion. Basically they are going, and there are some reports that they have not been briefed properly by the government also, because they were in a hurry, things were moving fast, so they have not got a proper briefing, and they have carried their own briefings. Like various parties are together in one delegation, they may be carrying their own party briefings. Like CPM member, somebody has gone from CPM. CPM holds a different view, TMC holds a different view, Congress holds a different view. So it is not necessary that all these views will synchronize within the framework of the delegation. And how will they represent India? The idea is that India is playing the victim card to the world. That India has been a victim of terrorism all this time, and this terrorism is emanating from Pakistan. And Pakistan is playing this game through its military and through its ISI just to checkmate India's progress and development, even at their own cost. Even at the cost of their underdevelopment or their backwardness, because they want to see India going down. That is the bottom line. And therefore these delegations are mandated to tell the world that India is a victim of terrorism and Pakistan is the aggressor and we are the sufferers. So that is the main point, which the delegations will carry this message to the world. To begin with, when this conflict happened, as we all know, there were 4 people who came into this particular part, 2 from outside, apparently from Pakistan, and 2 local Kashmiris. There were 4 of them who were the main perpetrators of this tragedy. Okay? They used the guns, perhaps AK-47s, he will be more eloquent on that, whatever guns they used, and within some 23-25 minutes the whole act was over, and then they went away. They still haven't been discovered. Their names are still not known. We know that there has been a NIA investigation. NIA has been mandated to investigate into this affair and give a report to the government. But the report, whether it has been given or not given, we don't know, because the report has not been made public. So those 4 killers, and you would recall Prime Minister Modi had mentioned in Bihar somewhere, where he just went after he came back from Saudi Arabia, that the perpetrators of this tragedy will be identified, will be tracked, and they will be eliminated along with their backers. Now, the first stage is to identify and track these killers. This has not happened in my view so far, and no questions are being asked. Instead, there is a counter narrative going that we of course fought a very valiant war, not a war but a combat, and our forces played it very well and they gave a good drubbing to Pakistan. This is proved on the ground by various reports, both Indian reports as well as global reports. So maybe this particular combat has been on India's favor. But then, are we going to, now let me come to the Modi doctrine. The Modi doctrine which he enunciated on May 10. There are three elements of this doctrine. The first element is, if any such terror attack happens in future, there will be immediate and strong counter retaliation. India will not sit quiet. India will retaliate. That is number one. Number two, we are not going to be any more fooled by what he said, the nuclear hang, by the nuclear bluff which Pakistan is playing on us. Number two, that we are no longer going to be intimidated by Pakistan's threat of a nuclear warfare with India. That is number two. Number three is, any act of terrorism, note my words, any act of terrorism emanating from Pakistan will be deemed as an act of war. Right? These three elements are part of the Modi doctrine. Let me critically analyze these three elements. First is swift retaliation. In this case, our retaliation took 2 weeks after, because we were obviously planning our strategy. This happened on 22nd. Our retaliation happened on the 6th of May, the night of 6th and 7th of May. So there was a gap of 2 weeks. So it was not a swift retaliation. So in future, we have to be more prompt in retaliating. That's one. Second, this nuclear question. Nuclear bluff is a bluff. Pakistan is not going to destroy its own house by putting our house under fire. Because if India goes in fire, Pakistan equally goes in fire. So the nuclear question does not arise at all. It will always be a conventional combat. Always, mark my words. There will be no question. Yes, our nuclear forces are deterrent forces. Both India, we have more or less equal number of nuclear missiles, around 155 to 160 nuclear missiles on both sides, but they are basically for deterrent purpose. They are not going to be used in warfare. For the simple reason that if a nuclear missile is used on India, it will affect not only India, but the whole of Asia. No country will be spared, and including Pakistan also. So it is basically a bluff. So Mr. Modi was right in pointing out that we will call the Pakistani bluff. Fine, it's good. The third he said was that any act of terror emanating from Pakistan will be deemed as an act of war. This is a very serious question. Theoretically, let's say tomorrow there is another attack by a lone terrorist on one person in Kashmir, in Srinagar. It is a terrorist attack. Perhaps he has come from Pakistan. So should we go to war with Pakistan on this incident? I think our wisdom will dictate that we do not jump into war. When there is war or when there is combat, both sides suffer. India suffers as well as Pakistan suffers. So war is detrimental to the development of countries who are concerned in that. So it is not that easy it is well said for boosting the morale, boosting the patriotic sentiments of Indians, that any act of terrorism will be deemed as an act of war, but there will be challenges. There will be challenges in immediately rustling our armed forces, which are always ready to follow the political leadership's directions. Our armed forces are highly disciplined and highly motivated and always ready to abide by the political leadership's decision. But it is not that easy to take any act of terrorism as an act of war and act on that. It is not that easy. So the Modi doctrine can be analyzed that yes, because of the circumstances in which the doctrine was enunciated, what Prime Minister Modi said was to galvanize the public sentiment of the Indian people that we will be very stern, we will be very strong, we will be very effective in combating terrorism, and we will not let this nonsense happen again and again. We will not let, because India is a strong country, India is a powerful country, India's armed forces are always on the gear, so we cannot allow that. That was basically the point which he was making. But that point has been taken too far now. And as we saw after that, all our TV anchors went overboard. That we have destroyed Lahore, we have destroyed Islamabad, we have destroyed this part, that part, Pakistan is nearly ruined, all that was happening in the TV studios by these TV anchors. So that was not a very positive development as a byproduct of what was going on between India and Pakistan. Okay? Now let me come to the ceasefire factor, which President Donald Trump announced. Why did President Donald Trump announce? It was, if you recollect, the afternoon of May 10, Indian time, that he put it in his Truth Social, that now America has mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and both are great nations, and both will, with their sagacity and statesmanship and thanking the leaders, the Prime Minister of both countries, he even went on to suggest that both the Prime Ministers should meet and have a meal together. That was Donald Trump. He said that. And his second tweet, which it came on Truth Social, was that, I put the canard of trade in them. That if you do not have a ceasefire, we will not have trade with you. But if you have a ceasefire, we will do good trade with both India and Pakistan. You are two great nations. So what he did was, he preempted India's move of this DGMO to DGMO conversation, which happened later, which our Foreign Secretary in a briefing later on announced. But before that, Donald Trump has already known to the world that India and Pakistan have got into a ceasefire situation. Prime Minister Modi corrected it by saying it is not a ceasefire, it is a pause. It is not a ceasefire. Because if should anything happen further, we are prepared to give a very effective response to that. But what Donald Trump did was three great blunders from our point of view. What are the three great blunders? First of all, he intervened in this conflict directly. We had decided in the Shimla summit in 1972 that there should be no scope for third-party intervention in bilateral matters between India and Pakistan. In fact, we were clear that the situation between India and Pakistan will only be solved by India and Pakistan. There will be no scope for a third party to come in between. And here was America, a third party, intervening in that conflict and even proposing a ceasefire, number one. Number two, he put India, hyphenated India with Pakistan, which we had never liked. Diplomatically, that was happening in the early 90s, during President Clinton's time. We got over that India should not be hyphenated with Pakistan. So we called for de-hyphenation, which means India and Pakistan are not of the same level. Our economic development, our military prowess, our fundamental values, our constitutional ethos are far superior to Pakistan's, and therefore there can be no equivalence, or there can be no treating together both the countries, which Trump did. Second. Third, what he did was, he took Kashmir onto the international platform, which we are totally against, that we will not internationalize Kashmir. We have always tried to make terrorism an international factor, telling the world that India has been a constant victim of terrorism, so that the global community knows that this is the situation in India, but we do not want Kashmir to be internationalized, which Donald Trump's tweet did that they internationalized Kashmir, and everybody is now talking more about Kashmir than about terrorism. And the Pahalgam April 22 incidents have just gone into the background. If you check any global report now, nobody talks about the Pahalgam reports. People are talking about how there was this combat and how each side won or lost, or what were the losses, this and that are happening. This kind of analysis is happening. So we, as observers of the scene, we have to differentiate between what actually is happening on the ground and what is not. You need not go 100% by media reports. There could be exaggerations. You know, I have been reading New York Times, I have been reading Telegraph, I have been reading Washington Post. All these reports can be kept aside. What you need to do is to see from your own angle how the situation is developing, what you think. And that is actually your job as students. When you are writing a paper or when you are attempting a question on this, you have to come out from your own side to think critically and write something which is true, which according to you has happened, and on which you have to write. Okay? So these three things Donald Trump did was, according to India, was a blunder. But did India rebut? India rebutted 3 days later. Donald Trump's tweet appeared on May 10. The foreign ministry spokesperson rebuttal happened on May 13. 3 days later, we rebutted Donald Trump. What took us so long to rebut? If these were in principle violations of certain red lines which we had drawn, and these red lines were crossed by a foreign power, we should have rebutted then and there, but we did not. We waited. We waited for 3 days, and May 13, our spokesperson said that no, there is no space for third-party intervention. No, we are against internationalizing Kashmir. We are totally against hyphenating India and Pakistan. All that was done. But there was some delay. This is the second part. The third part I will say now, what are our options? What are our diplomatic options and other non-kinetic options, apart from the military part? Now, look at this scenario. Look at the whole picture. During this 4-day combat, we saw that virtually, apart from Israel, no country came to India's support. No country in the world. We had been the leaders of G20. We had the presidents in 2023, September. We called ourselves Vishwaguru. Then Mr. Jaishankar called Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra means we are friend of the world. But if we are friend of the world, there must have been some friends to support us in our time of crisis. There was absolutely nil support except for Israel. And Israel had its own reasons why it supported India, because India has been in very close links with Israel and they had supported us in the past also. except Israel and to some extent Taliban. Taliban, of course, you can discount that factor. There was no third country which extended support to India, let alone our South Asian neighbors. We are spending billions of dollars in development assistance, in grant, in lines of credit, in giving to our neighbors, smaller neighbors, but except Bhutan, all of the neighbors of India have signed in for the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Everybody else. Today, in the world, there are two formations, and I will speak broadly. One formation is the global north, which comprises of America and G7 countries. That is the global north. There are 20 odd countries in that. And there is about G South, global south, which has about 80% of the global population in G South, which is represented in associations like BRICS. BRICS is the grouping for the future. BRICS is where India is a founding member. India is also a member of Quad. You know the Quad? I don't have to explain it anymore. Quad is a pro-Western grouping led by America. And what is the purpose of that? To checkmate China in the Indo-Pacific. So they are using India as a kind of a buffer to check China's expansion in the Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific area. Okay? The challenge for India is whether you can coexist in both Quad and BRICS, because these are two totally antagonistic groupings. These are two totally different governance systems. How they are different? The global north believes in a so-called rules-based order, which is dictated by America. And all the members of the global north will have to follow that. Okay? NATO countries, EU countries, G7 countries, all these developed countries are part of the global north, which have to follow the so-called rules-based international order. And they want the dominance of America to be a part of it. Okay? Now the BRICS is a totally different governance system. They have no superiority, no inferiority, no rules-based order. They are all equal. That's why they call it a multipolar world. Multipolar, because each country is a pole in itself. So if India today says that we are in a multipolar world, India is right. We are in a multipolar world. But that multipolar world is a creation of BRICS, not of the global north. Global north has only one pole, that is America. But global south has several poles, which makes it a multipolar world. So now the challenge before India is, BRICS is an upcoming organization which will be the organization of the future for progress, prosperity, development. And the instrumentality will be the BRI. Because why? Because BRI will give them connectivity. BRI will give them cyber power. BRI will give them closeness and bring them more and more progress and prosperity. That's why out of 54 African countries, 41 African countries have signed up for BRI. And as I said, except Bhutan, all other neighboring, our smaller neighbors have signed up for BRI. So the BRI is coming up as the future global order, if I may put it. So you see, there is a subtle shift in the geopolitics of the world. There is a shift from the north to the south, from the west to the east. There is a shift. Why this shift? Because of rise of China, because of rise of Asia, and because of the vulnerability of the Indo-Pacific region to conflicts. Now, there are analysts who are thinking that, okay, tomorrow if China and America go to a war over Taiwan, who will win, who will lose? In my view, there will be no conflict over Taiwan. China will avoid going to war with with Taiwan, For the simple reason that China doesn't want to get embroiled in a neighboring country which is also Chinese. Taiwanese are also Chinese and they are part of China only originally. It will think 10 times before attacking Taiwan, which is its own. And besides, there are 350 army bases of US surrounding China and this part. Out of 800 US bases in the world, 350 US bases are surrounding China. So China in a way is surrounded by 350 US bases. So China will not do that mistake. On the contrary, China is now aiming for peace and progress and prosperity of the global south, of which it will be the leader. Now, as you know, there are three great powers in the world today: China, Russia and America. There is no fourth power. India is an aspiring major power, but it has not come to that status. Okay? So, the situation for us is that what do we do? How do we handle this situation? I have thought over it. We have seen, our age, our generation have seen conflict after conflict in the subcontinent. We don't want your generation, to also be seeing the same kind of conflicts again and again and again and again. We want peace. We want progress, we want prosperity, we want jobs for our people, we want our inequality levels to come down. We want all the positives for our countries, for the region. So, in my view, we should aim at peace in the subcontinent. Now, as you know, SAARC, the regional grouping, has been dead for over 10 years. There has been no SAARC meeting. Why? Because the meeting which was to be, chaired by Pakistan was never held because India abstained from going there. There is another grouping which is also very important, which is called Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. Now, SCO's president, the current president is China, and BRICS current president is Russia, and both of them are going to have the summit meetings. India in the past has also had a presidency of the SCO, which it did online. It did not physically call the SCO members. It had an online presidency of SCO. But SCO is a group which aims at Eurasian unity, which is Russia's main motive. Russia's main motive is we will dominate the Eurasia continent. That is Russia's motive. China's motive is that we will be the leader of the global south. And China and Russia are together in this game. And China is a steadfast supporter of Pakistan. So our options are really limited. And our options, in my view, should be to aim at peace. So how do we aim at peace? Because this is a very, very conflicting situation which we are passing through and which will affect our populations. Suppose war breaks out, God forbid, our economy will go back by several decades. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want peace and progress and prosperity for our population. So what we need to do is have back channel contacts, have people-to-people contacts, use our pre-colonial legacy, use our cultural contacts, use our diplomatic, what we call the back channels, what we used to have during 2008, 2010, 2012, those kind of during Dr. Manmohan Singh's last days of UPA 2, we had these back channel talks. And I know the people who were engaged in those talks, that we had these talks ongoing so that Pakistan is restrained. Pakistan thinks good of India. At that time, it had led to a fall in terrorism, actually, because of the back channel talk. There is no harm in reviving back channel talks. And I would even argue that why not have, even a negotiating kind of position with Pakistan. We are the powerful side. Pakistan is the weaker side. So why don't we be more magnanimous? Why don't we be more generous? Whatever has happened, our people have been killed, terrorism has devastated our land, but we can gain a lot. How we can gain a lot? We will revive SARC, we will revive other regional groupings. Our neighbors will be more cordial towards us who are now going towards China. So we will develop a lot of goodwill among our neighbors in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood first policy is not being effective. And the proof we saw, that no neighbor came to our rescue. No neighbor supported us. We saw that. That is the failure of our neighborhood policy. I would say even a failure of our diplomatic policy. You call yourselves a Vishwamitra, but there is no person, there is no friend who is coming to your rescue. So what do you say that? So I will go, my final concluding remarks will be that let us look at the peace option. There are constituencies in both India and Pakistan who are asking for peace. They don't want war. They don't want conflict. They want peace. Both, on both sides of the border. Why not try that? Why not try that? Because by constantly engaging in a kind of a combat situation, as what our leadership has been saying, that we are in a strategically superior position and we are having this deterrent effect on Pakistan, why don't we bide for peace? So that our people will be happier, their people will be happier, we can come together, and not only that, if there is peace in the subcontinent, China will be subdued. China will be subdued. China will not be more proactive in helping out Pakistan against India. As such, our trade with China today is our biggest trading partner. We have a bilateral trade of $136 billion today with China, out of which more than $100 billion is our deficit, trade deficit with China, is our number one trading partner. If we are constantly antagonistic towards this Pakistan-China combined, it hits our trade. It hits our economic relations. Furthermore, our economic stability, if it is disturbed, we don't get investments, which are the prerequisite of development, which Professor Mishra will elucidate further. So in my view, finally, our diplomatic options at this point of time are limited. We have to be more realistic, we have to be more pragmatic, we have to first of all assess our own situation. We have to first of all assess our military preparedness, how far we can go in a real combat situation on a two-front war, how far can we go, number one. Number two, we have to gauge our own economic prowess, economic strength. Remember, a country is deemed powerful because of two things: military heft and economic power. These two things determine a country's strength. India should try to boost both by itself. You know, he will tell you how our indigenous industry now in the military is developing its capabilities, how it is going to match the recent developments on the Chinese military front and all that. We should build on that. We should build on that. We should build on making our economy stronger. And the most important thing is we have to abide by our constitutional values. We cannot throw them out into the open. If we are, disregarding our plurality, our diversity, our constitutional values, then we as a democracy cannot hold water in the world. Our image, our global image will suffer because we are disrespecting our own constitution. We are not giving the freedom of speech and expression to our people just because of a particular, factor. The recent case of Ali Mahmoodabad, the professor in Ashoka University, is a case in point. I don't have to elaborate on that, but those kind of instances should not happen. India has to be very clear in its constitutional ethos. We have a wonderful constitution which has given equal rights to all Indian citizens, and all Indian citizens means all Indian citizens, irrespective of caste or religion or group or anything else. We have to respect that. If we respect our constitution, the world will respect us. Otherwise, the world will not respect us. Otherwise, our image in the world will suffer badly, will be dented badly. However much our economy be developed, however much our military be developed. So this is my concluding remarks. I leave you at that, and after Professor Mishra speaks about the economic matter, we'll open us for questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador Malay Mishra. That was one of the best speeches I have ever heard from an international statesman. And I'm sure you all are rich by thousands and thousands of words and anecdotes that Ambassador Mishra has today shared with us. I have a couple of things only, 2-3 points to share with you all young people. You see, one of the things which really attracted me is that you have to think. Each one of you have to think. His concluding remarks is, peace should be the objective, right? And with that, I would like to suggest 3 of my favorite things: a book, a movie, and a quotation. Book name is The Negotiator by Frederick Forsyth. Movie also is named as Negotiator by Kevin Spacey, Samuel Jackson. And you see, we should be very, very cautious of the sources of information. Very difficult to, verify. In today's world, it's very difficult to verify. So I would like to quote one of the very famous lines about TV viewership. And the research was done by Columbia University. A professor had said, if TVs earn by showing what they show, they do not need to show anything better. Right? So I would like to, introduce Professor Satyanarayan Mishra. Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks, Deepak. Professor Satyanarayan Mishra had a long stint at Ministry of Defense, first as Director of Finance in DRDO with Dr. Abdul Kalam, and subsequently as a financial advisor, Indian Air Force, and Joint Secretary Aerospace with Dr. Pranab Mukherjee and Mr. A.K. Antony. Checkered personality. He received a commendation from Prime Minister's office for bringing out the Defense Procurement Manual in 2005. I wish you should have a vision and a mission that let me also indulge in writing a manual. It is mind-boggling. You can climb Mount Everest, but you cannot write a manual which is acknowledged and be part of the country's, encyclopedia, I would say. So that's a very, very great effort, a pioneering work in improving India's perception as a transparent global player. He did PhD in economics in 2011, studying the impact of offset policy in bolstering India's self-reliance index in the defense sector. Post-retirement in 2012, he has been a professor teaching economics and constitutional law at KIT University. He is also Dean Research at KIT School of Management. 14 scholars have received PhD under his guidance thus far. He is the author of 6 books and 127 research articles, including 18 in prestigious Scopus indexed journals like EPW Defense Study United Kingdom and Journal of Defense Studies. He regularly writes opinions in newspapers such as Political and Business Daily, digital newspapers like The Scroll, Mint, Hindu, Business Line, and The Wire. Trained at Defense Acquisition University, Washington, USA, IRBM Monterey, California, and the Marshall Institute of Strategic Studies at Munich. He is an acknowledged expert in the field of developmental economics, defense studies, court verdicts, and disability studies. A good round of applause for Professor Mishra. Sir.
Good evening, friends. Unlike my two very distinguished speakers, who are not teachers by profession, I earn my living by teaching. So with due apologies to my dear friend Ambassador Malay, who is very allergic to PPTs, I'll take you through just five slides, about 10 minutes to share my thoughts. But before I do that, let me also frankly confess that the kind of rundown that today we had from Ambassador Malay or General Atanu Patnaik has also been quite an experience for me, because I had the good fortune of seeing people at the very highest echelon of Defence Ministry. So it was quite an education for me. So before the PPTs come, let me briefly sum up what these two most wonderful speakers shared with all of you. General Atanu, basically, the central gravamen of his presentation or his narration was that we have been able to call the nuclear bluff. This was the main thing that he mentioned, that constantly, whether it was Balakot or it was Uri, all the time 2008 we have been dogged by the apprehension of Pakistan using the nuclear weapon. So that bluff has been called. So, and this was a point which was also highlighted by Ambassador Malay also. He also mentioned two more important things, that we have a very robust air defense system, extremely robust air defense system, which was demonstrated in the 4-day confrontation or war, whatever you would like to call it. He also mentioned that we have been able to plug, whatever intelligence gaps we had, possible gaps, and we have been able to plug the hideouts, intelligence gaps, and also we have been able to demonstrate our self-reliance in critical defense technology. There were three major takeaways from him. So these were the things that he tried to highlight. As far as Dr. Malay Mishra is concerned, he referred to three things. One was the Modi doctrine, the second was the ceasefire, and the third is what are the diplomatic options for India. Those are the three things that he tried to mention. On the Modi doctrine, of course, he was right that we were not very swift and immediate. He of course did mention that we need to improve our intelligence network. There were critical comments about how Donald Trump as the president has been unnecessarily trying to give an impression that he or America was at the center of all this ceasefire initiatives. But I think the important takeaway from his lecture were just three. Firstly, he essentially highlighted how we have a global north and global south, and how global north is dominated by the US, and how global south is dominated by China, and where India can be a major power. And essentially he was trying to say that we have the Shanghai cooperation, we have the BRIC. BRIC is basically being dominated by the Chinese, and the Shanghai cooperation by the Russians. So basically he was trying to say that how does India ensure that we revive SAARC? How do we improve our economic cooperation with our neighbors? Basically his lament was that how is it that during this kind of a conflict, we didn't have a single neighbor who really stood up for us, barring Israel, as he mentioned. We were almost friendless. I distinctly remember in 1971, when the US threatened us with the 7th Fleet, 1971, when the Indo-Pak war was going on, Brezhnev called up Mrs. Gandhi, and it was because of the Russians that the US bluff was called. So when I think of 1971 and I think of now, where the superpowers are giving us lectures to de-escalate, it was a moment of reckoning, and therefore the way he concluded three things that he mentioned are very important for your present generation. We are a generation who have seen almost 4 to 5 decades. So three things he tried to mention: that the importance of dialogues, peace initiatives, and also the importance of cultural contacts, then importance of geo-economic stability, and finally he mentioned about the importance of constitutional values. So he has made my job very simple by concluding these three aspects, which will be my starting point. So what I will do, friends, to understand this, let me first go into the economic dimension. So when we look at the economic dimension, if you could just turn around a little bit, you can just pick it up. So if you really look at it, what I have done, I have not only compared India with Pakistan, I have also brought in China. Okay, so any context of economic competition has to be in the backdrop of China, because I was in the vertex of many defense discussion as a joint secretary from 2004 to 2010. I was privy to some of the discussion, but I could say something, to all of you, that whenever there is a discussion with the Parliamentary Standing Committee and the MPs used to ask, how do we compare with China, there has been a disquieting silence, Whereas, it is absolutely agreed that we have a tremendous advantage over Pakistan, both economically and militarily. But when it comes to a comparison with China, I haven't seen a single chief, army chief or naval chief or the air force chief saying that we have an edge over China, chain over China. So therefore, that's an existential reality. But be that as it may, if you say that Pakistan is no comparison to India in terms of any aspect of economic parameter. The average GDP growth is around 6%. It is a highly indebted country, external debt is very high, our exports are much better. Our inflation rate is very low. They have an inflation of almost 23%. They run a debt of almost 50%. External debt is almost. Their human development index is much lower than India. Compared to that, if you see China has been the number one power as far as exports are concerned. When it comes to exports, they are the front runners, and foreign exchange reserves almost $2.4 trillion. So therefore, in terms of economic stability, except for the growth rate, please remember this, they were constantly better than India in terms of the GDP growth. They were almost 8 to 9%, whereas India was around 6%. But now we are the fastest growing economy. I'm not going to the other distribution aspect of growth, distributive justice, but purely in terms of economic growth, we are the front runners. And China, for a change, has been behind. The next one is in terms of military assets. Though General Atanu is here, I thought I'd like to mention to you, whenever you read, the data, please read it with a pinch of salt. So supposing I say that we have 2,200 fighter aircrafts and they have 1,400 fighter aircrafts, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are inferior. Please remember this. The potential for aircraft is extremely important. Today there is a lot of discussion whether the Chinese technology-based J-10C is better than Rafale aircraft. So therefore, please remember, the numbers do not tell you the whole truth. But be that as it may, in terms of tanks, in terms of aircraft carriers, in terms of submarines, we are way ahead of them. Our Navy is way ahead of them. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Now, Ambassador Malay mentioned that, most of the inventory, military inventory of China, of Pakistan is from China today. But you must remember that before 1990, 80% of them were from the US. You must remember, this is an extremely important statistics for all of us. Before 1990, almost everything from F-16, they were sourced from US. In case of India also, please remember that 80% of our inventory is from Russia. But that character change, please remember friends, from 2004. This is extremely important. After 2004, almost 70% of our imports are either from the US or from France or from Israel. You must remember this. So one of the reasons, people ask me that why China, Russia so lukewarm towards India, it is this. Have you understood me? The reason why today Russia remains little lukewarm to India compared to what it was in 1971, one of the predominant reasons is that Russia is not very sure whether we are going to take this stealth aircraft from them or from US. Many of the fighter aircrafts today, many of the reconnaissance systems today, many of the heavy helicopters today are sourced from America. Please remember this. The only time India bought a very major system from Russia was C-400 in 2018. General Patnaik mentioned about this. I remember how Manohar Parrikar, he overruled all objections. He said, no, we must take this. Today, if you have to thank one person, just one person, for the kind of foresight he could evince. He was an engineer, he was an IITian. And I had the good fortune of interacting with him. He was very quick on the feet, very quick on the feet. He was the one who said, please take C-400. So somebody said, no, the Americans, he said, don't forget about it. If you want to protect your Delhi and Bombay, your cities, please do take C-400. Are you all getting me? And today, the Russians are telling Indians that please set up a production base for C-500. Are you all getting me? So it is all a question of from which source are you taking your major equipments, military assets. Please remember, that drives the relationship. Just as Trump all the time says, trade. He's only talking of trade. The language is money. He's a businessman. So he's talking of money. So therefore, if Putin is not equally warm to India, it is largely because of this uncertain defense acquisition dimension. This you must very clearly understand. Next one. Now we come to the strategic messages. Though the general mentioned about this. These strategic messages. There's a wonderful interview with the General Huda. He was the Army Commander, Northern Command in 2016, very dear friend. I had a wonderful interview in Business Standard. I'll just share with all of you. Now, General Huda says that the character of conflict had changed. Changed from what? He says from a test of endurance. In Kargil, it was a hand-to-hand fight. It was a high-altitude fight. But this is the first time you are fighting standalone. You are not moving from your position. It is like Tendulkar not coming out of the crease when the spinner is bowling. So you remain within your crease. It's a standalone fight. Are you getting my point? So therefore, it's a fight between drones. It's a fight of the air defense system. So he says that from a test of endurance, close quarters fighting, the Operation Sindoor is fought afar using drones, stand-up precision weapons and long-range missiles. And he also says drones have become central to our combat. This is also extremely important. When I joined the ministry in 2004, the first procurement that I had to do was unmanned aerial vehicle, HEL variety, 35,000 feet. The high altitude herons we purchased. We had purchased them first in 2002. But the drones that we use this time, please remember this, this is extremely important for all of you, is through a joint collaboration by a defense-based, by a lab in Bangalore, Alpha Technologies, headed by Mr. Sankar. Sankar was the chairman of BL, a brilliant engineer. It's a technological tie-up between Israel and Alpha Technologies. And it was a fight between Turkish drone and Israeli drones. Very, very interesting and very, very interesting. So therefore, what General Huda is saying, that the challenges before us, the strategic challenges before us, is to see what kind of mix of drones we are going to take. Short range, long range, what kind of drones, and also the combination of, please remember, manned and unmanned drones. That's also very important. Whether you take more manned ones or unmanned ones, that's also a decision he takes. So the other fallout, from this particular discussion is that, when I was part of a committee with Dr. Kalam in 1995, we had identified that our self-reliance index, friends, in critical technology is about 30%. And that committee, I was the member secretary, and we had said by the 2015, we should improve it to 70%. So that was the time when we were struggling with most of our indigenous systems, whether it was Akash or Prithvi or Agni, all the systems, EW systems, all the systems. And that was the time I was very closely involved with that. So it gives me great pleasure to find that Akash has become successful. I went to Dr. Prahlad, who is the director, to France 3 times because the guidance systems was not working. I called him up. I said, do you remember how we went to France and we found that we are not getting the technology at the kind of money that we want? He said, Mr. Ji, only in 2005 we had a measure of success. The project started in 1983 and everybody talked only about Prithvi. Please remember, the story of missile success in India is essentially limited to Prithvi. Then came the story of BrahMos, the cruise missiles. I was part of this particular program, and when we signed this agreement in 1995, it gives me great pleasure to share with all of you that Boris Yeltsin hosted a dinner for Dr. Kalam, and Dr. Kalam was not a president at that time. He was a scientific advisor. So Boris Yeltsin, in English, he mentioned that the cruise missiles, the BrahMos missile, would be a new template of our strategic alliance. And lo and behold, this particular missile, the cruise missiles today, is the envy of almost every country. Today there is a demand for exports by many countries, including Indonesia and all. Many countries are looking for these cruise missiles, and we are now talking of an extended range, So please remember that from the cynicism, despondency of 90s, where I was associated with this program, from 90s, 2015, 2025, almost 35 years later, 3 decades later, when I find that we are self-reliant in surface to air missile, 25 kilometers range, cruise missiles of 300 kilometers range, MR SAM, this was a collaboration with Israel incidentally. This is a design and development cooperation. So the story of this 4-day confrontation is also the story of how India realized that it can be also self-reliant in defense technology. Please remember this. It has taken a lot of time, but we are on the right path. Please remember this. So because we're the peasants to do that. So therefore technological self-reliance, whether it is Akash or QR-SAM or BrahMos or the other drones, and the S-500 AD system, which now Russians set on. But the point here is that many people are thinking, including my friend Ambassador Malay mentioned to me, do you think that the Rafale technology that we have taken is a useless technology? I mean, So compared to the Chinese technology. So I could only tell him that from the data that I could get, I think the Chinese aircrafts, the J-10, had a missile of longer range. It had a range of 300 kilometers. I immediately rang up a friend of mine in the Indian Air Force. I asked him, Air Marshal Tyagi, I said, "Bhai, kya hua? I mean, what are the differences?" He said, "No, the range is much more, and it can fly at a higher altitude, 40,000 feet it can fly, whereas the Rafale can fly at 30,000 feet." I said, "Then why did you take this? You could have bought it from China. It is almost half the cost. I pay $125 million for a Rafale aircraft, and Pakistan gets it for $50 million, half the cost. It's a much lighter." So he said, "No, it's a multi-role combat aircraft. It has better maneuverability." So, so anyway, this short point I'm trying to make is that there will be a lot of debate, a lot of things saying that the French technology is inferior, the stocks have come down. But that I don't think is something which I think we should waste our time over. The more important thing I would like to highlight before I come to my last two slides is to say that we must prop up our self-reliance index in defense critical technologies. Now, what are the critical defense technology that we talk of? There are three. One is called the propulsion system, the engines. Anywhere you go in the world, people will say G engine. The LCA, light combat aircraft, which is being flown, has a G404 engine. So therefore, in terms of engines, the record of DRDO has been most pathetic. So that's the propulsion system. The other is weapons, the air-to-air missiles. We have been trying the Astra missile for a very long time, but it has been a dismal failure. The missile that we use is a French missile. It's an air-to-air missile. Then the last is seekers. Propulsion, then what did I say? Propulsion, missiles and seekers. These are the three things. So in all these things, air-to-air missiles and so in all these things, we need to improve our self-reliance. While we have achieved some kind of a success in the BrahMos missile, the Akash missile, we still have a lot of area to catch up. As far as the engines are concerned, the electronics that seekers are concerned, in terms of radars, for instance, active electronically scanned radar is a technology we still are not really able to come to terms. The performance of the DRDO has not been particularly, edifying on this. I come to the last two slides, friends.
How many more?
Just one. So now, what are the emerging realities? What are the emerging realities? What are the emerging realities? There's a wonderful edit today in the Business Standard by Shyam Saran, who was a foreign secretary. Now he says that it's a wonderful edit, all of you must read. I'll just share with all of you. He is saying that in the post World War order, when we set up UN Security Council, the WTO, so as the general very rightly mentioned, that they have almost become defunct. They have lost their teeth. So in this kind of a situation, what is happening today, this is a very important thing, that we are moving away from multilateralism to bilateralism. The free trade agreements that we are talking of. So this is the order of the day. This is the order of the day. We are no longer talking in terms of multilateralism. We are talking more in terms of bilateralism. And Samsaran writes at the end that Russia is more likely to get aligned with China than with India. He said we have to reset our foreign policy, keeping a note of this reality. This is extremely important. He said that when we put our pen to paper to our foreign policy, we have to see how we reset our foreign policy. I'm also reminded of a very wonderful book which I read in 1997. It's called The Idea of a Nation, because Ambassador Malay mentioned about the importance of constitutional values. A wonderful book, The Idea of a Nation. What is the idea of a nation? Now he says, Kildani says, that one of the most important facet of a nation like India is the constitutional democracy, and he believes that it has prevented monolithic outcomes. He also believes that we must think and act beyond aggressive essence of monochrome selfhood and move away from cultural homogenization to cultural multilateralism. Basically, so these are some of the points that Kildani mentioned, which still have a sense. So how do we respond to this? So I come to the concluding note of Ambassador Malay on this. So do we adopt a hyper masculine approach, or we have an approach of said no more blood, as was evidenced in the Naga conflict? There's a wonderful article in the Hindu which came out No Country for Pacifists. It basically makes an argument that it is a country of pacifists. It is not a country of warmongers. So these women in Nagaland, they started a movement in 1994 where they said no more bloods. It's very, very relevant even today. So there is a need for dialogue. Farid Zakaria, who speaks extremely well. So one of the things that he mentioned, that one of the biggest faults he found during this 4D thing was the lack of backroom channel communication, which Ambassador Malay mentioned. There is a complete breakdown in communication between the two countries. So he said it had never happened that there was no backroom channel discussion between the two countries. So that I think is extremely important. So therefore, what the all-party delegation achieves or not, and all of us know that the 2008 delegation was not a particularly edifying experience, but I personally feel that it sends a good message. It's an extremely good message. And I also would like to mention, there was a wonderful French diplomat. His name was Jean Monnet. Please note down for Jean Monnet. Monnet was a French diplomat. At the end of the Second World War, he said, we are all getting into this war because we have given priority to nationalism over brotherhood. This was a wonderful statement. We have given priority to nationalism, that Germany is the great, France is great. So therefore this whole hyper-nationalism, he said that must be substituted with brotherhood. And what did he say? What did he do? He set up the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951. It was a marriage between France and Germany. And he was, and they were arch rivals, and therefore I draw my lesson from such a wonderful thing that was staged in 1951, and it is rightly called the father of European Union, Monnet. And so therefore, the last 2 points I would like to mention is that we also need to think, I'm just taking a point from what Ambassador Malay mentioned, that how do we now reset? Because Trump bashing is not going to lead us anywhere. He would remain the paramount leader in the country. Whatever you may do, America will remain a very dominant power. So there may be some setback to him in his reciprocal tariff, but you have to be aware that he remains a very important global hegemon. So how does India, have a relationship between USA and Russia? How do you do that? That I think is going to be a very important challenge, because this war conclusively showed that Russia was not solidly behind us. And believe me, from my experience of 1971 war, and also in 1998 when we had the nuclear test, I remember the Americans had supplied us the flight control system. There was a company called Martin Marietta Overseas Corporation who had a contract for 35 million. They unilaterally cancelled that contract in 1998. I remember I went with Dr. Kalam to US. We literally begged them to reconsider cancellation. And they said nothing doing. $35 million, and that is how the program for the flight control system in LCA was delayed by almost 15 years. As Santana says, those who forget history would be condemned to repeat it. So we must not forget the experience of the past. So I think you have to take a very clear view. Political leadership, Mr. Modi is a very, very strong political leader. So he has to take a clear stand, because this kind of an open policy with the two superpowers possibly will not help. I mean, this is my take on this. And finally, as I say, we must strengthen the values of democracy, pluralism, open-mindedness, and that distinguishes ourselves from our neighbors. What is the distinction between us and the neighbors? Our pluralism, our open-mindedness and values of democracy. So as young students, please remember, warmongering is not the end of the game. You don't have to feel that you are a peacenik. There is an interesting story that when there was a marriage proposal of a girl with a boy, and when they met, and the girl asked that, what is your view on this India war? He said, no, we should have peace. He said, no, I'm not going to marry you. So he said, I'm not going to marry you. So I think we must come out of this hyper masculine, approach to a more pragmatic peace approach, where it's extremely important that we marginalize terrorism. If there is a dialogue that should be there, the only addition I like to make is, if there is a dialogue between the two countries, I think we should share intelligence. And because the terrorists are as much a threat to Pakistan as they are to India. Please remember that. They are not selective. Pakistan has also witnessed a number of terrorist attacks. So I think we need to have a dialogue. Apart from cultural ties of playing test match with each other or one-day matches with each other, or listening to Bade Ghulam Ali Khan, not Bade Ghulam Khan, this wonderful singers, classical singers like Raha Fateh Ali Khan. So I think is the way forward. Thank you very much, friends.
You see, Ambassador Mishra highlighted on different perspectives, strategies, diplomatic, national, international. His key message was we should work towards peace, right? So it is important that what do you think? Now this is monologue, we are not interacting, right? This is one-way delivery, right? You should step back, think, not right now, later on. You should also have internal deliberations. Right, which is right, which is wrong. Eventually it comes down to how balanced you are as a prominent officer serving the nation, serving the society, serving the country, right? Not just for yourself, but for relations across the globe. Important observation, I leave it up to you. On one end, we are saying we are part of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. On the other hand, China is supporting Pakistan in this conflict. It is not a war, it is a crisis. Now you should step back and start thinking, what is going on? Then C-400 procured from USA, now C-500, Russia is offering that you set up a manufacturing unit. Right? So again you step back and think, what kind of strategy is this? On one hand, then Professor Mishra is highlighting eventually it is going to be a China and Russian alliance. That means then on the other hand, Turkish and Israeli drones are fighting amongst each other. I would say, dvayo vivade trityasya labha. We are fighting amongst ourselves, but eventually we are losing. So we have to introspect, we have to think positive, we have to think about peace only going forward. Thanks, sirs. Thank you very, very much. Sir, would you like? I
have already summarized. I think we'll have a
question answers. Acha, okay. Acha, Vivek sir wants to share something online. So will he come online with the video? Would you call him up, please?
I'm going to question answer to करी कितना पहले क्या देखो question answer हो knowledge से
क्वेश्चन आंसर टा
आगे आगे
बहुत कर दो वैसे सर बहुत
ये हेले फिर आधा घंटा चल जीवो
आगे. So questions written or you want to speak extempo?
their minds are
You kindly stand up, introduce yourselves, and put up the question to one of these esteemed panel speakers.
This like the disturbance China is supporting Pakistan by giving the arm ammunition, terror funding, everything. And we have a trade deficit around $100 billion with China. So why we are buying more product from China? This is the time we can boycott Chinese product or we can put a restriction on the Chinese economy. So what is your thought on this?
move where? Four foundational agreements were signed with America, which has linked India's fate to America. So now the big challenge for us is which way do we tilt? Or when we say strategic autonomy for India, in what way we can use that strategic autonomy against whom? Because Trump is bent upon giving his weapons, giving his oil, giving his gas, giving his everything and collecting, that Mission 500. He wants to, balance the trade to $500 billion by 2030. So he is on his own mission. What do we do? You think it over. What should we do?
I'll just supplement to what my dear friend has mentioned. The share of America in IMF, is around 23%. So the voting in the IMF is decided not on the basis of one nation, one vote, but based on your contribution to the International Monetary Fund. That's one. The second thing is that, there are certain IMF conditionalities. Now, in this IMF conditionality, humanitarian issues do not figure in. It only says whether you are becoming a free market economy. Are you getting my point? So if you add told you also the Washington consensus that we talk of, it only basically ensures that whether you are opting for a free market economy. So if you do not have a constraint of the IMF guideline on them, they will say that no, we went by technicalities. And sadly, India also didn't block the voting.
But can India block?
It cannot block. It abstained. It could have voted against it. By not voting against it, many people believe that India lost an opportunity to message. But it couldn't have blocked. So that's the thing.
India couldn't have blocked.
They will go by the simple thing that we went by the IMF guideline. The guideline doesn't say that, humanitarian issues, humanitarian crisis, that is not part of this thing.
So therefore, the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh saying that part of this IMF loan will go to Pakistan funding terrorism is irrelevant, is immaterial. Pakistan has got a loan from IMF, they can use it in any way they like.
It will go by the guidelines. They are guidelines. Yeah, next.
So I need your name again, please. Speak up. Aditya. You see, sir also mentioned in a war, both parties lose. So dvaya vivadit tritiya silava. That's all is happening. So we have to think, introspect, to build a solid, sustainable relation with our neighbors.
Okay, sir, I have one question for Molay, sir. We know that in this war, in this the disturbance, China is supporting Pakistan by giving the ammunition, terror funding, everything. And we have a trade deficit around $100 billion with China. So why we are buying more product from China? This is the time we can boycott Chinese product or we can put a restriction on the Chinese economy. So what is your thought on this?
Move where? I am counter-questioning you. You want to move from China, but move to where? China controls 25% of global manufacturing. Okay? The manufacturing chain, the global whatever chain you say, that starts from China and ends with China. So where will you go? Which country will you trade now?
The cost is an extremely important factor. extremely important factor. They're very
Actually, from a long-term perspective, China has already invested on the necessary infrastructure to support the world market by mass producing n number of products. It could be country-specific also. You need to have the wherewithal to invest for a long-term infrastructure development.
I will give you an example. The recent Geneva negotiations between US and China. What happened? Trump had trumpeted that we are going to put 145% tariffs on India. They brought it down to 30% tariffs. By 115% they reduced. And so did China. Because China can stand on its own feet and dictate terms to America. It is now the second pole. What is said, a bipolar world. If there are two poles in the world today, one is America, one is China, China can dictate terms to America.
The only country.
Because it's
as
the
it has
leader.
done. As it has done. As it has done.
As it has
As it
done
is.
in Geneva.
Successfully.
Please ask a question to Vivek Patnaik.
Online people. If somebody wants to ask a question online.
Anybody else? Sir, please be ready. There will be a question for you.
Let him come on the big screen. That's nice, isn't it?
Can you hear, sir?
Very nice.
Sir,
Sir, can you hear us?
Deepak, switch over to the
Hello, can you hear us, sir? Good evening, sir.
no, it's frozen. This is the problem during Google Meet also. Image is frozen. So I don't think this.
ठीक है
Just image is frozen. Connectivity is a problem.
ठीक है
Can you hear, sir?
Can you hear? अरे तभी इतने टेक्नोलॉजी लोगों सब अच्छा
No. The problem is
Actually,
at his end.
Tangara,
People of India are very powerful. In a drastic situation like in Pahalgam attack, it is not just a normal thing. It's a very drastic situation. In this case, how and why a third party, like US President Donald Trump, says ceasefire and said ceasefire as well as how he intervened in our country's situation and why? This is my question.
When Donald Trump sent 4 military planes carrying Indian immigrants in shackles, tying their hands and feet, did India issue a slight protest? Did Mr. Modi speak a word? And Mr. Modi was sitting in Washington DC. When the first plane load of 130 odd Indian immigrants came, all bound in chains. We have lost the power to check America. That is the bare truth. We cannot.
See, basically what sir is saying, we all need to study a lot.
Yes, sir. Can you hear?
Why these things are happening. You will be the next generation officers without information that is already available. What is the meaning of strategy? Right, sirs are giving you a lot of knowledge for you to think about. So what sir said, 130 odd Indians in shackles. We need
Yes, sir,
to
yes, sir.
find out why.
You can hear.
So with that stature India has, for sure they will have the upper hand. They will think us ahead, etc. So we have to think why. And for that why, we need to organize. How would we become stronger? You get my point? Thank you so much. What's your name?
Very
ठीक है
you can ask some other questions if you have.
In one side, India fight against terrorism, but another side, India started bilateral talk with the Taliban. So what kind of this thing?
Well, India is starting talks with Taliban since January this year, when our foreign secretary met their foreign minister. And then our foreign minister followed it up by meeting with their foreign minister. The idea is that, of enemy's enemy could be our friend. That is the old Chinese saying. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So Taliban, Tehrik-e Taliban Pakistan, TTP, has been harassing Pakistan. So
They don't recognize the Durand line as the boundary between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So Khyber Pakhtunkhwa eventually will secede from from Pakistan. So we can help them, like we can help the Baloch.
No, you have any problem with Taliban? So let Taliban be our friend. So what is the problem?
So the terrorism has to be defined based on the region and based on the victim and based on the circumstance. Terrorism is not universally defined. It's not Islamic terrorism all over. There have been Irish.
The more Taliban harasses Pakistan through TTP or other means, the better it is for
India.
Like the 10 corps of Pakistan is engaged in Balochistan. So they are not in a position to pull them out and then deploy against India. Like 24 DB is also unable to move from Bahawalpur because the convoys can be attacked. So it helps. You must take help.
It's a strategic move on our part.
Sir, one last question from my side.
ତାଙ୍କୁ ପଚାର ନା
ଅନ୍ୟମାନଙ୍କୁ ପଚାର। What about the girls?
Who wants to ask?
ପଚାର ନା କିଛି ଅସୁବିଧା ପଚାର ନା
Why does India and Indian people always face terrorism?
No, terrorism is being faced all over the world. You have any number of terrorist attacks in Paris, in Berlin, Munich recently, London, 9/11. Okay, and before 9/11 happened in 2001, 1993 World Trade Center was bombed. So the mission was completed in 2001 by his uncle. Both Chacha and Bhatija are now in US jail. So the thing is, in terms of enduring, our thing is Kashmir. It's a unfinished agenda, and any doubts you had, Asim Munir has cleared. No, he has said that this Kashmir is an unfinished agenda. Yeah. What?
Why is terrorism happening?
What?
No, sir, not it.
Because Kashmir is the center of dispute between India and Pakistan. They feel that Kashmir should have been theirs in the two-nation theory, and when we partitioned in 47. And this is what Asim Munir said so very clearly on 16th of April. That this is unfinished agenda. They have been speaking it out loud enough for a deaf to hear, whether it be in the UN platform each year or in the Organization of Islamic Conference. Any platform they get, they talk about Kashmir. And we don't talk about it. That's something, recently that Sky News journalist Yalda Hakim, she has pointed out. If they are talking about Kashmir, why don't you rebut? Why don't you talk about Kashmir? By saying that we are not going to internationalize it, we want to keep it bilateral. By keeping mum, we are not countering a narrative. So I think possibly now.
The only difference now and before is that Pakistan has got much more credibility now than before. So the world listens more to Pakistan now than to India.
Because they have been speaking it out loudly all over.
Because India is keeping quiet.
Right.
India is investigating things but not letting it out to the public. Now look at the irony. This multi-party delegations are going all over the world. They are going to brief countries that what has happened is wrong and India is a victim of terrorism. This has happened, this has happened. They are carrying dossiers prepared by the government. But is the government willing to share the same information among the Indian people? They are refused special session of Parliament. Mr. Modi doesn't want to attend a special session. Mr. Modi doesn't want to address a multi-party delegate meeting in the Parliament. But they are going out of India to give credence to India's cause. Isn't there an irony? You are going to talk to the world about what happened in your backyard, but you cannot tell your own people what happened. Your own people are asking your explanation, your answers. Why are you quiet? You see, the point he is making is because we are quiet, we are making our case weak. And because Pakistan is loud, they are making the case strong. It's as simple as that. You know the mistake which we did when we attacked on the night of 6th and 7th, we attacked the hideouts, terrorist hideouts. Soon after that, we conveyed to them, Pakistan, that we have attacked your terrorist hideouts, 9 hideouts, we have killed so many people and all. Within hours, they briefed the international media that this is what India has done. So we have to obviously retaliate. So the global media was sympathetic towards Pakistan, retaliating against India's strike on terrorist hideouts.
Our hesitation in talking about Kashmir must be shed. I mean, to whom have you told about the atrocities that happened in the 90s? You know, Kashmir Files is the only file that is out, only movie that is out. You know, the Israelis have gone, setting up museums about Holocaust all over the world. Just, 6 million Jews. I'm not saying just is not a correct word. 6 million Jews. 1945 and before that. But they still go around talking about it. Our thing happened in 1995. We don't even have an inquiry commission. We don't put out facts to the world. So who is going to sympathize with you? Who is going to sympathize if you don't tell your story? Too much of restraint is not good, if you are going to the gym and build your muscles, once in a while, bash up somebody.
In 2022, Kashmir came out with a distinct security doctrine. We still don't have a security doctrine for India. Am I right?
That's true.
We still do not have a security doctrine. So people in India do not know what is our doctrine. On what basis we will attack Pakistan or any other country. We do not have a doctrine.
There is a lovely editorial by Sasi Tharoor 2 days back on this. What he is mentioning that we should develop a national security doctrine. This din tole varche. Dekhiyo. Bahut badhiya. I'll share both these edits with you. One by Sasi Tharoor and the other by Sam Saran. I personally find both the edits very, very.
Why? My question to you is, you should ask also. Why are we shy of enunciating a security doctrine? Why? We have a security advisor in the name of Doval. He goes around the world. He talks to his counterparts in China, in other parts of the world. Why haven't we got a codified security doctrine? And India is a big country. India is a great country. India's military is strong. We should have a strong security doctrine. Why don't we? Does it take long to have a security doctrine? We always keep it in wraps. What our security, others should not know. And yet we send out delegations to foreign countries to educate them about what is happening in India. Isn't it a contradiction? Any other question you have?
Thank you, sir.
My question is, is India is a sovereign country and no one is able of our country, and as well as we people of India are very powerful. In a drastic situation like in Pahalgam attack, it is not just a normal thing, it's a very drastic situation. In this case, how and why a third party is like US President Donald Trump says ceasefire and says ceasefire, and as well as like how he intervened in our country's situation and why? This is my question.
When Donald Trump sent 4 military planes carrying Indian immigrants in shackles, tying their hands and feet, did India issue a slight protest? Did Mr. Modi speak a word? And Mr. Modi was sitting in Washington DC when the first plane load of 130 odd Indian immigrants came, all bound in chains. We have lost the power to check America. That is the bare truth. We cannot.
See, basically what sir is saying, we all need to study a lot about
Yes, sir.
the historical perspective
hear?
of why these things are happening. You will be the next generation officers. Without information that is already available, what is the meaning of strategy? Right? Sirs
Hello,
are
can you
giving
hear,
you
sir?
a lot of knowledge for you to think about. Right? So what sir said, 130 odd Indians in shackles. We need to try to find out why so. So with that stature India has, for sure they will have the upper hand. They will take us left, right and center. So we have to think why. And for that why, we need to have alternatives. How will we become stronger in negotiation? You get my point? Very nice. Thank you so much. What's your name, please?
Very
Manasi. Bharati.
I have to introduce the person behind this JKM session. Beautiful, moderate kale शांत विषय I will tell you something.
Please do.
जोटा कि माने तमे जानी पड़थो जे को वे रे प्रॉपर थिंग्स को दे जगह रे कोई बार प्रॉपर वे एक्सप्लेन करिवे. So I will tell something about sir. पार्थ सर सर जे कि हमारा सीनियर वाइस प्रेसिडेंट होचंदी Hitachi and 35 years of IT experience, of which 24 years in education, healthcare and pharmaceutical domain sir काम करिसथि, including UN और Sustainable Development Goal हला, Ministry of Human Resource Development India, UGC, AICTE, CBSE, ICSE, ICAR. तो जितने को गवर्नमेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन में ऑलरेडी सर काम करिसथि and sir passing from a reputed institution हमारे NIT राउरकेला रू पास आउट करे. The stature and the personalities from the हमें हम जो कोऑर्डिनेशन मतलब जाने पर तो तांको विषय आओ few things Indian project जो हम देखिबा, so including हमारो ONGC pharmaceutical like petrochemicals like HCL, then हमारा Medicare में हम जो देखिबा particularly healthcare pharmaceutical सब इंडस्ट्री सांकर हमारा already experience अच्छी and automotive जो देखिबा GM Detroit USA काम करते हैं, steel manufacturing like LTV US and lot of all domains. So, we are really fortunate to have you sir here in this platform. So I request Pahalgam sir to give a bouquet facilitate.
Sure.
Bouquet. Huh? You give a bouquet.
What should I do? Oh.
Thank you so much.
Very
sir.
well done.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
You are on our team now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
तमे तो जणा कि गोटे कोटे वोट ऑफ थैंक दीप तो कहि दे टिके जी तमे हां वन ऑफ देम कहबे सर
तमे एडी आसला टिके फॉर्मल कर दियो. फैंटास्टिक लीडर.
अरे का गोटे पेपर तमे.
Okay, so thank you all for joining the session today. मुझे यदि कहबे आज सेसन गोटे माइंड ब्लोइंग सेसन थिला. डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव आम देखिले जमती कि मिलिटारी पर्सपेक्टिव है कि इंटरनेशनल डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशनशिप रे आम केमिति हैंडल करबा, फ्यूचर इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशनशिप केमिति हबा दरकार. आ सार कहले जे इकोनॉमिक एंगल रु हमर इंडिया रो इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रेटजी कौन रहिबा दरकार. सो one of the best session आमे इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशनशिप रे जदि आमे को बही पढ़िबा, मे बी यू कैन नॉट लर्न दिस मच थिंग जोटा कि प्रैक्टिकली आमे those who are expert, those who are policy maker of the country, they are directly talking to us. तेणु एटा हम पे आमे वेरी फॉर्चुनेट to have them in our platform. So thank you so much Atanu sir, Malay sir, Professor S.N. Mishra and Partha sir to make it a very successful. मु कहबे जे हमर जो फर्स्ट एपिसोड थिला related to India Pakistan relationship aftermath of Pahalgam and on the banner of Millennium Dialogue. Really I think it is going to be very big impact in Odisha, not only in Odisha, definitely national level जे भी देखिबे तो एते डिटेल एनालिसिस आम तो मीडिया रे देखुचे ओनली हाइलाइट थिंग्स करा जाउची जे कौन रहिबा दरकार ओनली टीआरपी पई आम हाइलाइट करूचे किंतु बैकग्राउंड रे कौन थिंग चलीची कौन रियल कथा रहुची तो एते डिटेल एनालिसिस यू कैन नॉट गेट एनीवेयर नॉट इवन एनी न्यूज चैनल नॉट इवन एनी बुक तमें डायरेक्टली तमें जो माने रियली आम इनवॉल्व एथिरे रियली जो माने एक्सपीरियंस सर आम कहले जे प्रोफेसर एस.एन. मिश्र कलाम सर संगे हो एके आंटोनी सर संगे हो ऑलरेडी माने काम करिसें तो से एक्सपीरियंस आम शिखुचे कि मल्ला सर ऑलरेडी एते गुडे कंट्री डायरेक्टली इंडिया रो आउ जो बायलैटरल रिलेशनशिप से इन्वॉल्व थिले और आमर अतनु सर हेले तो मिलिटरी ऑपरेशन से इन्वॉल्व थिले तो से जो तांकर प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस विल लर्न which we cannot learn from any books. Thank you so much sir, thank you everyone to join this session. Definitely आम फ्यूचर भी आहरी ये भाया सेशन करवा हेल्पफुल सेशन जोटा कि यूनिक आम कह फास्ट आमर ओडिशा रे ये भाया आम सेशन कर. थैंक यू एवरीवन and have a great day.
Thank you sir.
And we will continue